So thank you so much for being here and for providing an update from us and sharing with us what the District Attorney's Office is doing as it relates to the fentanyl crisis. So I'm going to go ahead and turn the floor over to you.
Thank you very much, and good morning to the distinguished members of this panel that have already spoken, and thank you Supervisor Foley and Chairman Chafee for inviting us to speak. One of the practical steps that the Orange County District Attorney has taken to help save lives, help hold dealers accountable, and address the danger of fentanyl distribution is craft an advisement that is now already being rolled out, that is now being given in, at least we're attempting to give it in every case in which a defendant pleads guilty to offenses involving controlled substances, in order to warn defendants about the dangers and consequences of selling, distributing, or manufacturing controlled substances. My intention today is to give a brief summary of the advisement, a brief overview that we've rolled out in Orange County, namely its content, its purpose, its reception by the courts, and its intended effect. We, of course, thank our partners at other DA's offices throughout the state for their input as we considered, which we considered in crafting our own version of the advisement for Orange County. Essentially, the way it works is that if a defendant pleads guilty, whether in a negotiated disposition with the people or in a plea to the court, we seek to have this advisement read so that it's reflected in the record. And the defendant, if the advisement is given, would hear and would be advised that the unlawful manufacture, sale, or furnishing of any controlled substance poses grave health risks to those who ingest it, are exposed to it, or are affected by its manufacture. The defendant would hear that in addition to the danger posed by the suspected controlled substance itself, the drug that the person thinks they're selling or distributing, that unbeknownst to the seller or furnisher, the controlled substance may contain other controlled substances that perhaps are even more dangerous, such as fentanyl, that significantly increase the threat to human life. The defendant is then warned that if he manufactures, sells, or furnishes any controlled substance, and a person dies as a result of ingesting it, being exposed to it, or its manufacture, then he may be charged with murder. The purpose of the advisement really and primarily is to inform and educate persons involved in the consumption, distribution, sale, or manufacture of controlled substances that the behavior in which they're engaged is dangerous and may lead to someone's death. And equally as important, the advisement seeks to inform defendants that fentanyl and other dangerous controlled substances may very well be present, even if they don't know it, in some other drug that they think they're consuming or that they think they're selling or distributing. And this puts defendants on notice that any drug they sell may contain lethal amounts of fentanyl. Therefore, should someone die as a result of the sale, the distribution, or the manufacture of the drugs, this advisement is also intended to serve as an important piece of evidence to show implied malice in the appropriate case. At the very least, it communicates the gravity of the warning. The purpose of the advisement, therefore, is twofold. Number one, to prevent unnecessary deaths, to save lives, to educate. But number two, also to communicate that if the defendant continues to sell or distribute or manufacture drugs and someone dies, then he may be held accountable for that death. And you'll also notice that in Orange County specifically, we've chosen to approach the advisement a bit more broadly than focusing on fentanyl alone, in order to be a bit more comprehensive and to address also the dangers of other drugs as well. We've also been working with legislators, law enforcement, and the courts in order to make sure the advisement reaches its intended audience. We certainly, starting, I believe, in November of last year, included in any negotiated disposition with the people in cases involving controlled substances. But we also seek to read it, or have the court read it, when a defendant pleads to the court. It's my understanding that many judges have permitted the advisement to be read, and where they have not, we will continue to argue that judges should permit the advisement to be given. So we look forward to work with our law enforcement partners, legislators, the courts, the distinguished members of this panel, and the public to do our part in helping to protect our community and addressing the unique problems posed by the unlawful distribution of fentanyl and other dangerous controlled substances. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much, and thanks for your work in this area. Can you share with us, is there anything that you need from the Board of Supervisors to be able to continue to do the work to root out opioid traffickers and fentanyl traffickers in our communities?
I would certainly need to be happy to relay your question to the district attorney, but certainly to just continue getting the message out. The work that you're doing today with this panel is a wonderful step in that direction to helping protect our community. So we thank you for that.
Okay, and is there any legislation that the district attorney's office is particularly interested in having the Board of Supervisors support?
It's my understanding that we're currently working with Senator Bates on SB 904 and SB 1053, which she has spoken about. But beyond that, I would have to get back to you.
Okay, what about Assembly Member Cotty Petrie Norris's two bills, AB 1673, which would create the Anti-Fentanyl Abuse Task Force, and AB 2446 that she referred to target traffickers responsible for fentanyl-related deaths?
I would assume that we're also working with her on that, but again, I would have to get back to you with more information. I'm not prepared to address that at this time.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing about the advisory process and what you're doing in the District Attorney's Office. We appreciate you joining us here today.